A look at Democrats' dream to redistrict Colorado in return for red state gerrymandering. You may vote on this come November. A move to make Colorado more liberal on prostitution than Nevada. Has people fired up. But does it really have a chance of passing at the Capitol?
Not a single person cares about legalizing prostitution.
Colorado may be withering under a lack of snow, but at least the Japanese beetles could get wiped out.
Yes, the less Japanese beetles, the better. Absolutely.
And families escaping abuse and violence find safety and support at a nonprofit we're going to give a big boost to together tonight. Because the news shouldn't just be watching the worst things happen to other people, because this is next. We're getting our first look at Democrats' effort to redraw Colorado's congressional map in response to President Trump and Republicans gerrymandering red states. The ballot measure and map out today with the backing of powerful Democrats in Washington would likely shift Colorado's evenly split 4-4 House delegation to 7 Democrats and just 1 Republican. The group calls itself Coloradans for a Level Playing Field. Call it what you will. It's an attempt to gerrymander Colorado for Democrats as Republican states gerrymandered their districts to avoid losing control of Congress in 2026. Colorado's voters would first have to agree to dismantle our independent redistricting process, at least on a temporary basis. The map being floated wouldn't take effect until 2028. Let's take a quick tour. Hold on, we're going to go fast. Democrat Diana DeGette's Denver district would add some of Adams County. Democrat Joe Negus's district would stretch from Boulder to far northwest Colorado, including conservative Mesa and Garfield counties. Republican Jeff Hurd would have more trouble holding on in southwest Colorado when it expands along the I-70 corridor and loses red areas of the western slope. Lauren Boebert would likely be the last Republican standing. The safest GOP seat in Colorado would become even redder. Republican Jeff Crank's leftward lilting district would pick up western Douglas County and become more in play. Democrats Jason Crow and Brittany Petterson would give up some of their safe districts to cut into Republican chances elsewhere. And Colorado's swingiest seat, held by Republican Gabe Evans, would move decidedly toward Democrats. Last year on Next, Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser came out early in favor of Colorado joining these redistricting wars. You acknowledge that gerrymandering is bad for voters, yes, right? It's bad for democracy. Yes. It's bad for the function of our government. Those would be harms that would be done to Coloradans if this were to come to pass. And it would be done largely to Coloradans who are on the right side of the spectrum, who would lose representation that matches their values. Why is it worth it to do that harm to Coloradans because of something happening out of state?
Let me offer a very important kind of corrective. I'm talking about mid-cycle redistricting in Colorado. If you look at our state fairly, I don't think you would draw a 4-4 map. We are a bluer state.
The conservative group Advance Colorado has already announced it will challenge this redistricting push in court before it even possibly gets to your ballot in November. Again, wouldn't go into place until 2028 and 2030. We'll keep an eye on it. A long-shot effort by Democrats at the state capitol to decriminalize prostitution has certainly energized Republicans who see it as the perfect symbol of the left becoming too radical in Colorado. Our Angeline McCall looks at the attempt to make Colorado even more liberal on prostitution than Nevada, where local jurisdictions decide.
In Denver, even the bill sponsors acknowledge what's being proposed isn't often talked about at the state capitol.
You know, look, this isn't the most comfortable issue. I think there's a lot of folks who would rather that we don't talk about it.
Democratic State Senator Nick Hinrichsen is sponsoring this bill that would decriminalize prostitution across the state. He argues it will reduce violent crimes, result in better health outcomes for sex workers, and create more trust to report crimes to law enforcement.
People should be able to have confidence in their communications, and they should be able to, to report the things that they see that are really problematic.
If you ask Republicans opposing the measure, they'll tell you they don't buy those arguments.
This bill legalizing prostitution it's a terrible idea. It's really distracting from the real work at hand here in Colorado.
Republican State Senator Lisa Frizzell worries law enforcement would have a difficult time determining who might be consenting as a sex worker versus those forced against their will.
And so law enforcement, in talking with my own sheriff, Sheriff Weekly, They are very concerned about this particular bill because they see it as really creating so many downstream issues.
Opposing sides with different points. Data from the ACLU says that after the Netherlands legalized prostitution, the country saw more than a 30% decrease in reported rape offenses. But in other studies, the ACLU also found that Maine's law that allows selling sex but not purchasing it actually increases the risk of violence and threatens the safety of sex workers. Another point from the ACLU, they found that sex workers in indoor environments like brothels experience lower levels of violence than those in more outdoor settings, like soliciting for business on a street or publicly. Keep in mind, this data is really hard as an apples-to-apples comparison because Nevada, for instance, only permits sex work in brothels. This bill in Colorado doesn't specify that kind of regulation. Also keep in mind that crimes that are adjacent to prostitution, like pimping, for instance, still illegal under this law.
Let's go back to the idea of whether or not this passes for all of the talk about it, right? Democrats don't need a single Republican vote to pass anything at the Capitol. So the question is, are moderate Democrats on board with this?
Yeah, that's a good question. We asked the sponsor, do you have the votes? His response to us was, well, that's kind of a tough one. Ultimately, yes, Republicans are going to be opposed to this, and it's really going to be those moderate Democrats that will decide if it even gets out of committee, which we'll be watching in the next couple of weeks.
And we're waiting to see. There's one person who's being replaced on a committee, a Democrat, and if they replace her with another moderate, it might not get out of committee. We shall see. All right, Angeline, thank you. City of Aurora is settling a lawsuit against the owners of an apartment complex that shut down after claims it had been taken over by a Venezuelan gang. The city wanted $1 million in damages from CBZ management after the whole saga with the Edge at Lowry Apartments at 12th and Dallas last year. This settlement requires the owners to pay the city $300,000. City's going to put that settlement in front of a judge for approval next month. The buildings became the center of national news after the owners claimed that the gang Tren de Aragua took over 3 of their properties in Aurora in 2024. The property owners had previously been in big trouble with the city for code violations and unsafe conditions. Then Donald Trump came to Aurora as a candidate, falsely claiming the city had been conquered by a migrant gang. Those same troubled apartments came up again last week in the news when Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons said under oath to Congress that city officials and law enforcement leaked details of an ICE operation days before the closure of the apartments, causing that operation to fail. When we asked questions about holes in the timeline and the details of that claim, ICE then deleted it from its social media accounts. The bad news about Colorado's severe lack of snow this winter is that human beings without water will eventually wither and die. But so will our enemies, like Japanese beetles. Our Evan Krugel has that.
Few things make a Colorado gardener wince, like seeing a rosebush covered in Japanese beetles.
The less Japanese beetles, the better.
Lisa Mason
Absolutely.
doesn't normally talk about bugs in such a negative way.
They have a coppery abdomen.
She studies them and the plants they rely on for the CSU extension.
I get to teach people about plants and bugs. That's my favorite part, plants and bugs. And they go hand in hand too.
That's why Lisa is keeping a close eye on how dry this winter has been.
Wet soil's much easier to dig into. Yeah, this is a little bit tough. Oh boy.
Below this Kentucky bluegrass is where Japanese beetle grubs spend their winter before emerging in the spring to snack on everything you're trying to grow.
Roses, Virginia creeper, grape, and the list goes on.
Before they emerge, the grubs rely on wet soil to stay alive, something they're not getting much of right now.
And so if they don't live in completely moist soil, they are susceptible to drying out, which is an excellent thing.
So far this year, Denver has only seen about 1/3 of its normal moisture. And while Lisa says that could impact Japanese beetle numbers, it's unclear to what degree.
But it's really going to depend on weather patterns. Sadly, they are very adaptable.
And even if numbers are down this summer, Lisa doesn't expect the problem to go away.
They're so well established, they're likely here for good.
Now, if you have a garden in the Denver area, you likely know Japanese beetles are quite widespread along the Front Range, with high population centers in Boulder and the Denver suburbs. Those beetles typically don't start emerging until late May or even June. So, Kyle, it could still be a few months before we know the true impact of whether they died off or not.
But there's a legit chance that I'm not going to spend my summer every morning out there with a cup of soapy water, flicking hundreds of them into their final bath.
So you're saying there's a chance?
You're saying there's a chance.
We'll take it.
I'll take it. Evan
Yeah.
Krugel, thank you. When domestic violence survivors in Douglas County make their escape and start to rebuild their lives, the Ember Center is with them every step of the way. This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports their work helping Coloradans start fresh after abuse. We can't show you the faces of the thousands of people that they have helped. We can show you their art representing their journey from violence and fear to safety. The Ember Center has a 24-hour crisis line. They help people into emergency shelter, and they work with them clear through the legal process. They lost about a third of their federal funding to help crime victims, but they are determined not to cut services if they don't have to, and that includes their immediate client need fund. That helps families and individuals do all of the stuff of life that can get disrupted. Make rent, pay their utilities, find transportation, buy medication. The things that get scrambled when they uproot their lives to escape domestic violence or sexual assault. But we can help. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. We'll send you that link to donate. Even $5 helps. You've proven that through 5-6 years of pooling your $5 donations to raise $17.5 million for nonprofits in our state. I will never ask you to give if I don't support the cause myself, so as always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling. Almost 7,500 of you have signed up to make a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. You put in your info once, and you don't have to remember it each week. Your donation's automatically split among all the nonprofits we feature at your chosen donation amount, and we expect that's going to add almost $50,000 to this weekly campaign.
There's a lot of noise and fear, and we think the fear is most impacting the abortion seekers. They are afraid.
Abortion advocates in Colorado are spending millions to help people in more restrictive states get access to medical care. As Colorado celebrates its 150th birthday, we highlight places that shouldn't disappear. Next. Colorado's largest abortion rights advocacy group says every year since Roe v. Wade was overturned, the demand in Colorado has increased. Cobalt Abortion Fund says it spent more than $2.4 million in 2025, up from $1.9 million in 2024. More than 1,000% increase in spending from 2021 when Roe was still in place. Cobalt says they've seen the biggest spending increase in procedure funding. About half of their clients come to Colorado from Texas. The amount of time that it takes for them to set up the travel and then get here means they're later in pregnancy and makes the procedures more expensive.
They're being forced to travel. And as they're forced to travel, their care is delayed and their care becomes more and more expensive over time. So we're seeing an increase in client volume from year to year, and then also an increase in the amount of funding that each abortion seeker needs.
Cobalt's been working with the Democratic majority of the state legislature to strengthen protection for abortion access for patients and providers. And they're currently supporting a bill we've talked about here that would require law enforcement to get a warrant before searching license plate camera databases like Flock over fear that that technology could be used, especially by out-of-state law enforcement, to track patients who are coming here for abortions. Turn to 9 News meteorologist Chris Bianchi now, and I'm guessing that we're talking about the fact that finally there's some snow in the high country.
Finally, some snow for us in the high country. In Denver, different story. In fact, we've only had 13 inches of snow so far this season. That is our lowest winter to date snowfall for us in Denver since 1901. I actually asked Kyle, who was president, off camera, who was president back in 1901. McKinley, and Kyle got it right. I had to look it up. Sixth lowest season to date snowfall on record in Denver, but in the mountains, again, it is snowing, and that is where we want to see the snow right now. That is some good news. We are starting to make up some ground in terms of our paltry season-to-date snowpack numbers. Snowing steadily right now, Eisenhower-Johnson tunnels, west to Vail Pass. Just looking at the cameras there, and it is snow covered there at Vail Pass, as well as the tunnels and Loveland Pass and Rabbit Ears Pass right now. That snow will continue over the next few hours. That snow will dissipate later on tonight into early tomorrow morning. Still some light snow tomorrow, but not as heavy as it is right now. And that snow generally on the light side tomorrow before it picks back up again for Friday. High wind warning for the foothills west of Denver, includes Boulder, as well as the foothills west of Fort Collins, Pueblo, Colorado Springs within that high wind warning. Those winds really pick up late tonight, 50, 60, maybe even 70-mile-an-hour winds tonight before that wind dies down tomorrow. There will be weather Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. There we go. It'll warm up into the near 70-degree range early next week with those temperatures. Very cold for us on Friday with a high just around freezing.
Colorado just continues to show that preservation's not necessarily about freezing time. It's about building a future.
By trying to preserve historic places in our state before they're gone. Hey, just a reminder, before this show is gone, you can catch it streaming each weeknight, 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus. And we are a podcast if you can't stand to look at us. Preserving Colorado's historic places isn't just about keeping old buildings standing. It is about keeping alive the stories of the people who made those places important. 5 more places around our state are now on the list of Colorado's endangered places.
When we think of Colorado, we think of history. I am Katie Peterson. I am the Endangered Places Program Director for Colorado Preservation Inc. We are a statewide organization that lends that technical assistance and helps apply for grant funding for 149 endangered places across Colorado. We listed 5 historic resources as the 2026 addition to Colorado's Most Endangered Places. So the first is Bent's Old Fort, just outside of La Junta, preserving that story of Santa Fe Trail and this convergence of cultures. And the next we have Hartman Castle in Gunnison County. What really fascinates me the most is Annie. Annie and Alonzo Hartman, her incredible story in literally building this house. And then we talk about La Morada, which is in Costilla County. And this is where the penitentes used to practice. They led masses, helped the needy, they helped the sick. And then we have the Ordway Pharmacy in Crowley County. The town collects these old buildings and they turn around and they give budding entrepreneurs 3 years to create your business and revitalize this building. And if you do that within that period, the building's yours. And lastly, we have the Pearl Theater that's in Chaffee County in Buena Vista. You can just feel the love and pride that these people have for this building. Colorado just continues to show that preservation is not necessarily about freezing time. It's about building a future and how we're able to remember where it came from.
Those old theaters are so cool. They saved one of those in my hometown. It was like the greatest thing ever. Zvi, thank you. Back with the feedback next. Organizations that serve crime victims have seen their funding slashed in the last year or so. We've talked about that quite a bit. The Ember Center in Douglas County is determined not to roll back their work serving the survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491. We'll send you that link to join me and a bunch of others in supporting their work. When someone calls into their 24-hour crisis line or connects with them after they escape violence at their home or in a relationship, the Ember Center and that nonprofit's trained staff are there to help with whatever they need in life, whether that is housing or clothing or transportation or legal assistance through the judicial system, all of those parts of rebuilding their lives. A lot of feedback on that story about Japanese beetles maybe getting knocked out by our lack of snow and water this winter. This from an email. There's something therapeutic about a cup of morning coffee and a cup of soapy water and flicking them to their bubbly death. Wait, hold on a second, wait. Cup of coffee, cup of soapy water, flicking them to their bubbly... How many arms you got? There's a math problem there. One of the things I don't like about those beetles is I always have to walk back over to my patio furniture to pick up my coffee to sip it, then flick more of them into the soapy water.